Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Jeb Smith, and in today's video we're going to talk about the NACA program. I've had a lot of people ask me about NACA over the last couple of months when talking about FHA loans and VA loans and conventional loans, basically loans for first-time home buyers, anyone buying a property. People want to know about NACA. Is it good? Is it bad? What are the pros and cons? So in today's video, we're going to dive into it in a little more detail. We're going to talk about the pros of it, but we're also going to talk about the cons. We're going to talk about, is it realistic in the housing market that we're in right now to actually use a loan through NACA? Is it something that you could get accepted in this market? What does it take to get approved? That's what we're going to discuss. Now, I'll be completely transparent in this video. NACA isn't something that I've ever used when I did loans. So I was a mortgage broker, as many of you guys know, many years ago, but for over 10 years. I did a lot of loans during that time period and very, very familiar with loans, as you guys know in other videos where I've discussed them. But NACA wasn't a program that I was familiar with until somewhat recently. And so I dove into the details of the loan, and that's why it's taken me a little bit of time to make this video, because I wanted to get some ins and outs, talk to some people that have tried to do loans through NACA to see if they are realistic, to see how they play out, and work the ins and outs of it, because I don't want to be here feeding you information that I don't know myself. And so I've taken the time to do some research. I'm also going to provide some links below where you can, get some more information on the program if you're interested in trying to apply for it or use it. And we're going to talk about, the ins and outs of it. What does it take to actually get approved? But for a minute, let's talk about some of the benefits of using a NACA loan. What is the hype? Why are people attracted to it? Why do people want to know more about it? For those of you who may not even be familiar with it, like myself, just a couple of months ago, it's because NACA is a nonprofit. It's an acronym. I don't know exactly. I don't have it right in front of me at the moment what it stands for, but I'll bring it up in just a minute. But it's a nonprofit that essentially provides assistance to home buyers. And they allow you to purchase with no down payment, no closing cost, no fees. There's no mortgage insurance. They're not looking at your credit score per se. You can actually buy the rate down when using the loan, and it's relatively inexpensive compared to other loans to buy down that rate. So those are some of the big draws to it, right? I mean, when you tell somebody, hey, you can purchase a home with no money down, no fees, no closing cost, and get into a home, it seems really, really attractive. But as we know, things that seem too good to be true are usually too good to be true. And so we're going to pull up some information actually from the NACA website. We're going to pull up their handbook because it's not as easy as just applying like you would go into, your traditional bank and just apply for a loan. It's a 10-step process that you have to go through when getting a loan through NACA. In addition to some other things that you have to do, like you have to volunteer with them. There's a membership required to be a member of NACA to actually go through this process as well. So it's not as simple as just calling a mortgage broker like I've discussed in the past and getting approved for a loan. FHA loans, they allow you to purchase with a minimal down payment of 3.5%, but it's a lot easier to get an FHA loan, although it requires more money than getting a loan through NACA. But if you want to know more about FHA, I'll link to a video here just to give you an idea of what that is like. But let's take a minute and pull up the workbook from NACA to go over some of the highlights of it. And then we can talk in more detail about the process. And then at the end, we can talk, is it realistic in this market to actually get a loan from NACA? So I'm going to pull up some information here on the screen to give us a better idea. At least I think I am. All right. So this is part of the workbook from NACA. It's 52 pages, and it goes over the highlights, right? And so some of those things I mentioned, that initially no down payment, no closing costs, no mortgage insurance, no credit score, below market interest rate. So all of those things seem great. But What does it actually mean? Now, you can't own a home and use a loan through NACA, so that's one of the downsides, and you can be a first-time home buyer as well. You could have owned a home before as well. You just can't own a property when using this program. So it allows you to purchase existing property, new construction up to 1 to 4 units, and mixed co-ops, etc. So there are different types of property that you can qualify for, but it can't be an investment property. It has to be a property that you're going to live in. And so let's, if you can see going through here, there's a lot of information. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I will provide those links below. But I did want to pull up some information here. So like I mentioned, there are 10 steps that you have to go through in order to get a loan through NACA. And there's a reason that people fall out of the process, because it requires a lot of work. It's not as simple, as I mentioned, as just going to talk to a mortgage professional or going into your bank, just providing basic income documentation, asset documentation, your tax returns, and having them give you an approval in 24 hours. This is a process, depending on how motivated you are, how quickly you want to get through it, could take you 30 days, could take you 6 months in some cases. In fact, I talked to a mortgage professional, which I'll talk more about this at the end, that has done some of these, and they've talked about the process of doing it as well. So we'll talk about that. But so the first step in the process, again, I've highlighted some of this information. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but the first step in the process is a home buyer workshop, right? So you must attend a home buyer workshop. It's a free educational forum which is open to everyone prior to determining your status as a NACA member or a non-member. Upon completion of the home buyer workshop, you should access your web file to schedule an appointment with a counselor, and from there, you essentially go into you have to submit certain documentation, complete information, sign a membership and authorization. You also have to volunteer to work. What does that actually mean? They actually make you go out and work on building houses. You have to volunteer your time to do that. Another thing I believe you have to do is register to vote. Not sure why you have to register to vote, but that's one of the requirements in there. Now, they do pull your credit report, although your credit score isn't necessarily used. They want to make sure that you're paying your bills on time, but we can talk about that in just a moment. So once you have that initial home buyer workshop, then you get in touch with a counselor. The counselor will review your debt and other payments, make sure you're actually qualified to purchase a home. They'll tell you how much you can purchase based on your budget and give you, a detailed purchase price budget, if you will, to where you should be looking with regards to purchasing a home. From there, you get into mortgage options, right? So the details of becoming NACA qualified are also provided. NACA qualification is required to access the NACA mortgage. Once you are NACA qualified, you will need to continue to pay all your accounts on time, maintain your income, obtain no new debt, save the difference between your current housing payment and future affordable mortgage payments each month until closing, and then keep submitting the current documentations throughout the process. So you don't just submit the documentation up front, you have to keep updating it. So if it takes you 6 months, takes you a year, you have to keep updating that information throughout. The housing search is the next process. Once you are qualified, you need to attend a purchase workshop. So there's a different workshop outside of that first one that you went to. And then they more or less put you in touch with a real estate agent that is qualified to do NACA, which they talk about here. An agent referred to you by NACA will be available to assist you in finding a home. Now, if you were referred by someone to NACA, you can work back with that agent. And you're not required to use one of their agents, but you probably want to in this case, because this isn't as easy to navigate as traditional financing. So one thing to keep in mind is your qualification is valid for 6 months. So after 6 months, you're going to have to go and have this updated. Again, purchase contract, you'll need to negotiate with the seller. Listing, this is key. Who will be responsible for repairs, determine the amount of any seller funds for repairs to be included in the mortgage amount, any seller contributed funds to buy down the interest rate, and then execute the purchase contract. So they're telling you up front that you need to negotiate a repair amount in the contract. You need to negotiate, a buy down of the interest rate in the contract up front. That's going to be difficult, especially in the market that we're in right now, which I'll talk more about that in a moment. But that's going to be difficult to get a seller to pay in a very hot housing market where people are bidding over each other, multiple offers, and you're up against buyers that aren't asking for things like this. Now, if you're the only offer on a property, maybe, but we're going to talk about even some of the downsides to being the only offer on a property as well, and why this might not work. And then go down here and it talks about, since you are responsible for paying any penalties arising from a purchase agreement, regardless of the actions of NACA or the lender, we strongly recommend that your contract adhere to the following guidelines. So they're telling you that regardless of what happens with NACA, delaying the process or whatever, that you're responsible for paying any penalties that arise. So that could be, as you see here, a loss of your earnest money deposit, a loss of deposit if the property does not appraise, charge or penalties for closings past a certain number of days. We're going to talk about that one here in a moment because I think that's going to be one of the big things. And again, not going to go through all of this stuff. You can check out the link below and look at it for yourself. Another key here is the property condition. So not only are you going to get a home inspection, they have a NACA certified inspector to come out and inspect the property to make sure that the property's in condition that they'll approve. And if it's not, you have to negotiate those repairs, and essentially you or the seller, somebody has to pay for those repairs. So, they're going to be a little bit more strict on property. So if it's a property that needs a lot of work, it may not qualify. Again, there are credit access. It's with this, you'll need to submit certain documentation. It goes over all of that. Mortgage processing. So there should be a few conditions on your mortgage. So once you're qualified through, you've been approved, chances are there's not a lot of additional documentation needed because they've done a lot of the legwork up front, and it talks about that there. Then you have closing, and then you have a post-purchase program where, as long as you're a member, there are benefits to being with NACA and using that program. So that is really the program in a nutshell. Now, it's probably seems like a great program because of all that it does, but understand you're in a very, very hot housing market right now. 2021, properties are selling for above the asking price in a couple of days. Chances are for over the asking price, what have you. It's going to be very, very difficult in this market to get someone to go with an offer that is NACA backed. And the reason for that is because they have the tendency to take longer than traditional loans. It's, most loans out there take somewhere around 30 days to get approved. What I'm hearing with NACA is that it, can be 45 days, 60 days, 90 days in some cases. If it's not a normal process. They could keep asking for documentation and keep extending that. So you as a buyer have to find a seller that would be willing to keep extending the loan and not, force you to back out or what have you. So you've got to be patient for one. You've got to be diligent and get the stuff done, but you've also got to find a seller that's willing to work with you. And I think in a housing market that we're in right now, that is going to be difficult. Now, I've talked to people that have done NACA loans or NACA loans, or tried to do them, and the consensus was that it was a complete pain on the mortgage side. Now, I know you'll watch videos out there, and there are people touting it, saying it was great, and they had a great experience, and what have you, and that is one side of it, and that could very well be the case for you, but I also want to bring transparency and let you know the people that I talked to said that it was a pain. It took forever. They had one client that NACA kept telling that they didn't qualify for the program. They kept asking them to volunteer. They were building houses, doing some stuff, and this went on for months. And finally, that person contacted this loan professional, this mortgage professional, and they got them approved through a different loan, actually using an FHA loan, and not even, they had to come up with down payment and closing cost and what have you. So a little bit different. But NACA's saying they don't qualify when in fact they did qualify the entire time. So just keep that in mind if you're one of those people out there looking. It's not, it's not as easy as it might seem. The The catch is that no down payment, no closing cost, and that gets people on the hook because they don't have to come up with that money. But I will tell you, if you're buying a house and you don't have the money for the down payment and the closing cost and what have you, I don't want to say you shouldn't be buying a house, but you shouldn't be buying a house, right? You should save your money and get to a point where you actually have money in the bank to be able to put that down payment if you needed to. And then at that point, if you want to use a NACA program, at least you have the money in the bank at that point if something went wrong, that you're able to pay that mortgage. So I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of people commenting on this and telling me that I'm crazy and that it's great and what have you. And it very well could be. But I'm just here to tell you what I've heard from different people who have used it and why it's probably not something that any seller would even remotely consider in a market like we're in right now. So you may want to work on saving your down payment and going with a different type of loan. So that's it for now. If you do have questions, comments, leave them below. I'm happy to address those. If you like content like this, real estate related, and you want to keep up to date on everything that is going on, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. But for now, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I appreciate all the support. Hope to see you again soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.